Hello and welcome to Tales from the Bay, a Bay Area which not only hosted a divisional round playoff game, but a winning divisional round playoff game as the San Francisco 49ers 19-12 win over the Dallas Cowboys sees them advance to the conference championship. This Sunday, 8 p.m. in the NFC title game, 49ers in the Lincoln Financial Field to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. And I started this week being relatively negative, and I started this week seeing the line and thinking that sounds about right. I might even give the Eagles more points. And as the week has gone on, in classic fashion, I've slowly talked myself more and more into it. I'm Will Gavin. The brilliant Nicholas McGee is with me as well. Nicholas, how are you feeling up off the back of Sunday? Still buzzing from that Cowboys win?
Very much still buzzing and relatively calm. As you say that it's the hope that kind of kills you, but you've got to have hope in life. Otherwise, what's the reason in doing anything? And I think this Niners team has given you plenty of reasons for hope as we go into what the game we all wanted and the game we all expected on the NFC side, even if it took a little bit more of an effort than perhaps many thought to get there against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think we'll start off with that game because listen, as far as I'm concerned, people are suggesting that the overall takeaway from it is one with a relative negativity towards the offense. Like they could have lost that game and Dak played so poorly and everything else. I think first thing is we said last week, and I said that I think that the two matchups are bad for the Cowboys. And it proved so on one side of the ball. The Cowboys offense matched up horrendously against the 49ers defense, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I have to hold my hands up and say that I did not expect the performance out of the Cowboys defense that we got. I thought they were excellent at every level. I thought Leighton Vander Esch had his best game in a Cowboys uniform. And yet, even so, I take positives from the fact that they stayed in the game, they did enough, they ground it out, and then in the second half, they had a couple of good long scoring drives where the offense really came together and Brock Purdy made some big plays. So to me, when you're at this stage in the season, that is a good offensive performance. It's going to be rare that against a team in a NFC title game or a divisional round game or a Super Bowl that you're going to get the opportunity to put up 30, 40 points.
Yeah, I think the way you look at it in terms of positives on it is that they figured it out. The first half was Dallas was winning up front. Their defensive line played really, really well. You had Micah Parsons and Marcus Lawrence just flying all over the field, and Niners couldn't really get anything going on the ground, particularly when they entered the outside zone game, which is obviously so known for. Second half, they really they changed their stripes a little bit, particularly in the run game. Kind of ran it a little bit more at them, more at you runs, kind of more inside zone, and certainly a lot more power and counter runs. Kind of took away the ability of Marcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons to fly over the field. Kind of got Aaron Bank to Spencer Burford pulling across the formation and got physical and opened up those holes for Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell. Had a great game in the second half. And Kyle did a better job of kind of scheming up the one-on-ones in the second half. You saw the key example, Greg Olsen highlighted on the third down where they got Brandon Ayuk one-on-one with Anthony Barr, which was obviously a complete matchup. But throughout the second half, if you watch your 22, you can see there was a lot more one-on-one matchups that were favourable for Purdy, whereas in the first half, there was a lot of kind of windows. He wasn't sure whether to throw into them. He wasn't sure whether to push it downfield. He was kind of a bit gun-shy, but the second half, there was a lot more clearer, defined things in terms of Kittle over the middle or Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk, or there was a third down completion along one to Juwan Jennings as well. And of course, obviously, Purdy himself had the improvised juggling completion to George Kittle, which kind of sparked everything in the second half. But it was kind of an offensive perspective, it was kind of figuring it out. And that's why I think you take great confidence in Kyle Shanahan as a play caller. I mean, okay, we were frustrated in the first half. What's my counterpunch? And he found the right counterpunches.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, look, the disappointments for me were the fact that they only got the 2 field goals off the turnovers, particularly one that happened deep in San Francisco territory. And that is where, you start to wobble and your cheeks start to clench a little bit and you get worried about what the opposition are going to do to you. But hearing Purdy afterwards, and I know that we bang on about this, I know we keep talking about this, but the maturity yet again when talking about those situations, when discussing how he approached it, when discussing his, him being disappointed that they didn't come away with those opportunities, but they didn't actually, being disappointed they didn't come away with those opportunities, but sometimes accepting that in the NFL you've got to take what's in front of you and not do something stupid. And there was a huge play when I talk about the Cowboys' defensive performance where people got very excited about what Micah Parsons did, where he read a screen, and I'm trying to remember who the outlet ball was to, but he read a screen. I think it might have been Debo, absolutely to perfection. And instead of cutting up inside and trying to get to Purdy, he got into the passing lane. And it was a brilliantly read play, and it was
No, it's
excellent
plain, yeah, yeah,
from Micah Parsons.
yeah.
But what Purdy did was saw Micah Parsons in the throwing lane, so pulled the ball down, accepted the sack, knew that it gave them an opportunity to, go and get a field goal still. And that, for me, is a strength, not a weakness. That's a situation where Jimmy Garoppolo throws it straight into the arms of the guy at the second level, and suddenly we're in trouble. Now, at the same time, there were the interceptable passes. Obviously, the Trayvon Diggs, the most clear one, where it was tipped at the line of scrimmage into the arms of the awaiting Diggs. I don't think it was a particularly brilliant coverage play or anything. And those keep coming, and he keeps getting away with them. And I feel like people are almost making too much of a deal of them. And I say that in terms of people get very pointed about those plays. But I think every quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, over the last 4 years as a starter, has more interceptable passes that haven't been picked off than any other quarterback in the NFL. And yet, I think if anyone was starting a brand new franchise today and was given pick any player in the NFL to start your franchise with, I think 98% of people would pick Patrick Mahomes as the man that they started their franchise with. So those plays happen, and sometimes you do get lucky and get away with it, and sometimes an offensive player makes a play, and so I think that's been maybe made too much of a deal of. But it's just his poise, it's his maturity, and there is this question this week, and he has been put up before. We talked about this earlier in the year. I saw when Gridiron tweeted the earlier version of the Rookie of the Year things. I said I think it's a joke that the people who were nominated were Olave, Wilson, and Kenneth Walker III. I said that I thought Brock Purdy should be nominated. He might have only had 6 games, 5 starts in the regular season, 2 starts since, and, joins an absolute list of legends in Joe Flacco and Mark Sanchez as rookies who have 2 wins in the playoffs in their rookie season. But the fact is that more of an impact in those games with the winning record, with the way that he's handled it, with everything else, than for me, any of those other players, particularly the wide receivers, who I like Garrett Wilson, I like Chris Olave, but both, I think, have been very up and down this year. Probably had 2 or 3 games where they've really flashed. And you think, wow, we've got a hell of a player on our hands. And you can blame the other facets around them, the quarterback throwing to them, the offense and everything else. Kenneth Walker probably, I think, has a better argument. But I think if you are going to allow the smaller sample size into the conversation, in terms of pure impact, I think he's my first choice.
Yes, I think it's an issue of how you frame the award. If you look at it as a rookie MVP, which in essence probably that's what it is, then it's hard to look away from Purdy because he's kept the team that's finished with the second seed and 2 home playoff games. Not only kept them afloat, but inspired them to a 10-game winning streak to end the regular season through a large part through obviously influenced by having the best offensive coordinator in the NFL as his head coach. But he's inspired this team to that winning streak and on the back of his own arm. Obviously, he had a great running game, great defense, but he's made these tremendous plays out of structure. He's immediately processed the Kyle Shanahan offense. So because of him, if we were going from Jimmy Garoppolo to Josh Johnson, the season's probably over already. But we've gone to Brock Purdy, and he's inspired this winning streak that's now 12 games, could be 13 if they beat the Eagles in Philadelphia. And as much as I like Garrett Wilson and I like Chris Olave, and they are kind of victims of circumstance. If they had better quarterbacks and been on better teams, they might have a stronger case. I think if you're treating it as a rookie MVP, it's tough to look away from Purdy, whether that'll actually kind of result in a win when it gets to NFL honors in Arizona the Super Bowl week. We'll see. Maybe people go with the consistency of the 2 wide receivers, but he certainly has an extremely strong case, and if you look at the most valuable, it's tough to argue against him.
Just a mention to flip it to the 49ers defense and the performance this weekend. And obviously, we've talked a lot about Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year. No sacks in the 2 playoff games, but still plenty of affecting plays, still plenty of pressure, similar to what I said about that Micah Parsons play, where he changes how the play happens down to down. But I heard a great question on Mina Kimes' podcast, to give her another shout out on this show, because it seems to be our our stock person. I heard a great question on her podcast with Dominic Foxworth when they were praising Fred Warner. And, you know, the nominative defensive rookie of the year for most people, Sauce Gardner, tweeted after the brilliant coverage play that he had on CD Lamb, the play he had on CD Lamb over the middle, where he started in the A gap and then tracked CD Lamb 20 yards downfield to make a pass breakup. And Sauce Gardner tweeted after that, Fred Warner's just a defensive back playing at linebacker. And honestly, the question that they asked, that I'm really struggling to think of another position where it's more true. Trent Williams at left tackle might be one of the other options, considering we're a 49ers podcast. Is there like an all-pro this year, particularly if it's a two-position all-pro or an all-pro this year, where you're looking at the voting, where the gap between the first player and the rest of the players is bigger than Fred Warner to the rest of the off-ball linebackers? Because you could say, all right, Nick Bosa's defensive player of the year, but Myles Garrett's been brilliant. Micah Parsons has been brilliant. Hassan Reddick's been brilliant and had one of his best games this weekend. Like, there are other players in that position who've been absolutely sensational. And okay, maybe if you're really going to go into the analytics, you might say that Zach Martin, there's no right guard better than him, which I'm not sure is true. But actually, like, position through position, I think Fred Warner, while he might not be like pound for pound the best football player in the NFL, his performances this year make him easily the best linebacker in the NFL for me. And how multiple he is, I just don't think anyone can do what he does.
Yeah, that's really an excellent question. I pulled up the off protein, and then my mind goes to offensive line. Like, it's either Trent or it's Lane Johnson on the other side. But again, the second team All Pro is Tristan Wirfs, and he's a really good right tackle, so the gap's not huge there. Jason Kelsey at centre, maybe best centre in the league still at whatever age he is now. Been doing it for so long. But again, the second team there's Creed Humphrey, and he's been great. So it's difficult to think of the gap. And as much as I love Matt Milano for the Bills, he can't do what Fred Warner did on that play. I don't think there's another linebacker in the league that could do what he did on that play. Like you say, just mugging the front in the A gap and then dropping out and covering one of the best wide receivers in football. I mean, he doesn't get credit for the pass deflection, but the completion and touchdown doesn't happen because of him. And that was the linebackers set the tone for the entire game. That was looking through some of the best behind the scenes content we got from the 49ers this week, and they were in their pre-game huddle. They were calling themselves the best in the world, and they backed it up in a big way. Fred Warner proved his best linebacker in the world. Dre Greenlaw was excellent. Stupid penalty aside on the drive that got 315 yards to the Cowboys. Again, I'd be shouting at my TV, but Aziz Al-Shire was fantastic. Great against the run, and then had the hilarious capper of bull rushing Zeke Elliott.
It's honestly mad how often they play with three linebackers on the field. Like, how often they play like just a straight up old school base defense.
They were tremendous.
And I think it's because those linebackers are so good, and Fred Warner covers so brilliantly that you kind of go, all right, well, where everyone else will play nickel, we'll play three linebackers, and Fred Warner might blitz you, but he also might play in the slot and take out your second best receiver. Like, it's just all over the place.
The back seven for the Niners on Sunday was absolutely tremendous, and it was led by the linebackers, but there wasn't a level of the defense that I was unhappy with watching this game. But they were all in their own way tremendous. Tano Hufanga had his best game for weeks. Really disciplined in coverage for once. None of those busts. Timing his blitzes to perfection. Gibson's continues to be amazing. And Lenore attacked again and comes back with the interception. He's kind of proving people wrong very quickly in the playoffs. Javarius Ward wasn't really tested. And then saw a lot of tweets during the game about the defensive line saying, where's Nick Bosa? If you watch the tape back, Nick Bosa was everywhere. He might not have had a sack, but he was Tyler Smith on one side and Tyron Smith on the other side were both given absolute hell by Nick Bosa. And the key miss on one of the final drives to the Cowboys where Dak Prescott has Michael Gallup kind of wide open. Gallup's beaten Javarius Ward by a step. The ball's underthrown because Dak Prescott has to move off his spot to his left because Nick Bosa is bull rushing Tyron Smith into him, and that forces a bad throw. Nick Bosa's everywhere in this game, and Samson Ebukam on the other side was brilliant as well. So it was just probably their best defensive performance since at least when they won the division in Seattle. It was a masterclass to watch back.
And you mentioned the kind of coverage stuff. Demo Lenore being as good as he was the last 2 weeks, obviously jumping the route for that interception was an underthrown ball. There were big questions. And I do think like the Cowboys, if they have Amari Cooper instead of Michael Gallup, are they a much better offense? Absolutely. And Tony Pollard going out of the game, huge problem for them, as he's basically their second best receiver as well as being their best running back. So, I don't want to take that away from them and act like this was just a complete shutdown performance. But where Charvarius Ward gave up the big play to DK Metcalf, and actually two big plays in that Seahawks game, he was just completely all over them on Sunday and made a couple of really good plays downfield. Dalton Schultz might have made two horror mistakes with the not knowing about turning the ball upfield and then not dragging his foot to get out of bounds. But it's partially because he's been beat up for 4 quarters and he's not been allowed any space and he's not been. And so, sometimes you force errors. Sometimes errors aren't unforced, silly mistakes. Sometimes they are. You've been harassed and harangued so much and put under so much pressure that you fail to do a fundamental properly. So, yeah, I was very impressed with their performance. All in all, I thought they were brilliant. And now we turn our attention to the Eagles this weekend. Look, maybe we should take a quick dive down into the locker room first. See who we've got speaking this week, see how the mood is in the camp going into this Eagles game, seeing how everyone's feeling about it. And then me and Nick will have a little look at that Giants game, tell you what we thought about the Eagles this weekend and what we think the 49ers can do coming up.
All right, we're here in the Niner locker room with Ray Ray McCloud, and Ray, let's talk about the Cowboy game. You had two, big plays. Obviously, one was a negative, one was a huge positive. Let's talk about the first one. You haven't fumbled all year, man. I mean, how frustrating was that for you?
It's always frustrating making a mistake. I take pride on that. Not having no turnovers all year, but unfortunately, it was a time in the game where, early in the game where as a team, we could still overcome it. My attitude, like always, next play mentality, relentless, you know what I'm saying? So, it happens. Someone, not myself, probably would have fair called it, but when I'm back there, I'm trying to score every time. And we have an attitude back there. It comes with a cost.
You've been tremendously consistent this year, and then you backed it up on the next time you touched the ball. You went 53 yards. Tell us, what's going through your mind between the fumble and the next play, because there's only about 15 minutes of time there. Are you standing there on the sidelines cursing yourself? Are you mad at yourself? Are you getting frustrated? Are you staying positive? What's your mindset like in between there, before the next play?
Next play?
Before the next time you got a chance to return.
I'm saying next play mentality. That's it happens, it's over with. Me doing that, I'm going to do nothing. Trent, the whole defense was like, we got you, whatever. Trent was like, go make a big play, whatever. That's what I do. I made plays with the ball in my hand. Probably 65% or more of my touches probably been big plays.
Yeah.
20 plus, if it's offense or punt return. Maybe more than that. But I knew it was going to come. I just had to be patient and had to stay locked in,
You seemed like on that next return, you were hell-bent to make a huge play and make a big play, and you got a 53-yard return. Tell us about what you saw when you caught the ball, and what was it a middle return, a right return?
It was a middle return.
What is the key on that one? Is it make the first guy miss? What's your mindset as soon as you catch it?
Find a seam. Read it, find a seam. Try to stretch the D. I forget already how, because we're on a new team, how if they backdoor a lot or they rip by it. But overall, I'm off film tape by Reed, who I know who's going to have a hole for me, who's not going to have a hole for me. If it's not there, I know my next step from there. But overall, the middle return, do my thing.
Yeah. And you busted a big one there. How good did that feel at the end of that play? Did you feel like, take a deep breath, now I'm really in the game? I've had a negative play, but I've had a huge play.
I was mad about that one, too. I was trying to score, but the defense played it well. I think the L1 or something came off, and he was upfield already, so I kind of trying to see how I want to do it, but I was pinned against the sideline, so the only thing I had to do was get out of bounds. But I was excited about it. It was a big play, but I was still like, damn, I should have scored. Or a few plays later before that, I still dropped the punt. In my mind, people probably forgot about it, but because of play. But me, I wasn't. Every day I work on that. So for me, I took pride in that. And I told Snyder, he kind of cussed me out about it. Cause I was like, damn. I said, we won. So we won the NFC Championship. But I said, and I feel like my night got messed up at that point. He said, for what? It was like, you don't take your own whatever. But overall, man, I just take pride in that, man. Not turning the ball over this year, and
4-1
happens, but to the best of us. But
How hard is this game mentally, as far as, and we know physically you guys pay a price, right? But mentally, nobody ever really talks about how difficult football is for the players mentally. Is it difficult to bounce back and to keep preparing new opponents and all these factors that come in every week? How difficult? What kind of challenges?
I think it comes with multiple challenges all and off the field mentally.
Yeah.
Family issues, body issues, just normal life issues, and then including football. You might have an up and down week. And it's not a consistent week of that you want it to be, and you go home. Sometimes that for me, that's my piece. Go play with my son, go play with my girl, just chill at home. But not everybody has that, But coming to work every day, knowing what football brings to the table, knowing something you love, but it's something like you gotta do a lot of the don'ts, so you can do it on Sundays. Like it's some things you don't want to do, it's just you gotta do it. So Sunday come, everything is easy, and mentally, you get tired. But that's what make the greats greats. When the good get tired, you still going. That's what make you great. Cause a lot of good players in the league. But it's only 4 teams left.
You're one of them.
So.
You guys are one of them. Talk about Philly. What do you watched them a little bit on film? Now, when you watch film, you watch defensive film and you watch special team film, right?
I just watched the game.
Yeah, you watched the whole game. So you watched the Giant game all the way through.
Yeah.
What'd you think of them? I mean, they had a tremendous game.
Oh, definitely. Eagles is dominating, man, on all phases of the game right now. Special teams, on a physical caliber, just offensively, offensive line, defensive line, the interiors. We match up well against us, so it's going to be a great game, competitive game. 2 great teams going at it, so definitely a game to watch.
I heard Kerry Hyder saying a few minutes ago that, for some guys, getting out on the road is kind of, it's obviously a challenge, but it's refreshing because it's like there's not as many distractions. You don't have people calling you. They don't have tickets. You don't have to deal with any of that crap. Mm-hmm. What do you think? How do you look at road games versus home games? Is it a little simpler? Is it all football on the road compared to being at home?
It's more of a business thing when you're on the road. Mm-hmm. It's more business-oriented as a team, just eating together, meetings together. Nothing else to do, no families around. Some families fly up, but overall, everybody just kind of watch football together, or college games. College not right now, but whatever on the TV at the time, we sit around and watch games together, fellowship and all that. So it makes it more of a business trip, wind down, go to war, So rather than at home, come in Saturday, walk through, everybody go back home to their families. We meet again at night, So it's a big difference.
You're a veteran. You've played in probably every stadium in the league.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. You haven't played in Philly yet?
I haven't played in Philly.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, in Philly on Sunday, you're going to have a bunch of screaming all kinds of obscenities at you. What does that do to you? Does that fire you up? Does it piss you off? Does it motivate you? Do you block it out?
I'll block it out.
You block it out.
Same thing on this little fumble thing, block it out.
Yeah.
People going to be a fan today, tomorrow be an enemy, and the next day be a fan again. So it's will come with the game,
Yeah.
But I understand that, and so to be honest, I actually dealt with that in college. Going to Clemson, NC State, South Carolina was probably the worst team we played with that. They had to stop the game for a little bit because they were so close, but they could cuss at you, spit on you, throw stuff at you, and we scored a lot of times. And they were throwing wrapping oranges and they were hitting us while we were scoring and throwing waters at us and stuff.
How do you block that out?
It's hard.
Yeah.
Especially if it hits you or somebody spit on you and spit hit you. But it's a mental thing, man. You gotta see a bigger picture.
Yeah. Obviously, you're looking at their defense. They got a big defensive line. They got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Bradbury in the back end, big-time players. What does their defense specifically look like to you when you watch them?
They jump out on tape, jump out, scream team.
Yeah.
And they run sideline to sideline. They fast, and like every other game, we got to execute. That's our job, execute and do our job, play by play. And the big play is gonna come, and so we just gotta stay consistent and know who we're going against.
You guys have a lot of confidence in this room. There's a swagger to this team. Do you sense that, or am I wrong when I say that?
It starts from my coach, man. The way Kyle walked, you can tell the way he walked. He walked with a swagger. He walked with a certain confidence, naturally, just his personality. And I think it all spills down to our team.
What is Kyle like with you guys? Because he seems very cool, he's like almost seems like a player in some ways.
Yes, very much so. He's definitely a coach, but in ways, it's just when you're just around, he's definitely a player's coach. Give you motivation, inspirational vibrations, and that's all you can ask for in a coach. Every day we come out, even if he's having a bad day, you got to make sure that he's around us having a good day, so we have a good day as a team. And that's part of being a leader.
Last one for you. When you get on the field pregame in Philly on Sunday, what do you want to do? You want to field? You got a certain number of punts you want to field? What is your pregame field routine before you? Obviously you have things that you do here, music and whatnot. But on the field, what are you trying to do before the game?
See, I watch the other teams punter. See how he kicking. He's consistent. A number of yards he's kicking. What type of kicks I feel like he's starting to feel out himself that he's liking, or win. Overall, other than that, I'm out there catching punts, warming my mind up. Not even my body, warming my mind up mentally. Play my game, my pace of game.
Are there any decisions you've got to make as far as do you use a deeper cleat on a certain surface? You same cleats every week.
Yeah, that's in you, not only you.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference to you.
It's in you, not only, unless it's storming, you got to change it up then, but it's going to be cold. So.
Yeah. Philly's, going to be raucous and the place is going to be rocking, but you guys are playing for a Super Bowl here. The focus has got to be intense. What do you do to get into that mindset to be like, man, this is, or do you not? Do you treat it like week 3, or do you say to yourself, hey man, we win this game, we're going to the Super Bowl?
I treat like no other game. This is just another bite of the elephant to get to the big dance. And that's how you got to look at it. But you know what it come with. You probably won't feel it after the game, or probably Monday after the game. Whoever, some people different, But for me, treat like every other game, and that's just how you got to go into the game, preparation. All year we're preparing for this game to get to the Super Bowl, and don't change anything. Just stay focused how we've been. We went on a run regular season. That's in the past. We're 2-0 in the postseason. Now it's time to 1-0 this week.
Yeah, that kid Turpin looked pretty good, huh?
Yeah, he's dope. He's a good player. Yeah.
Do you know him at all?
No, I don't know.
Damn, he was explosive.
Well,
hey, take one to the house this week, man.
Yes,
Good luck to you, man. Appreciate you.
Brilliant stuff. So, Nick, Eagles this weekend. Saturday night, they manhandled the New York Giants. Just pulled them to pieces, decimated them. And, okay, we kind of always thought that this might be the team the Giants were. We always knew that kind of strength and depth of the Eagles was clearly there. And look, there's so much to be positive about this Eagles team. It's an Eagles team that I like a lot. And the way that Howie Roseman's put the team together, and the way he's managed to go and find himself so many bargains this offseason. CJ Gardner-Johnson, who had one of the best kind of safety / nickel corner blitzes I've seen in ages in this game, to force an interception, getting him for absolutely nothing, bringing in Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh when they couldn't stop the run earlier in the season for relative pennies for two guys with their experience as they have it, taking Hassan Reddick, who just was so poorly used in both Phoenix and maybe to a lesser extent in the year between, but now he's in Philadelphia, might be one of the best free agent pickups of the year, and probably deserves to be in that same all-pro conversation that we were having earlier with the pass rushers. Like, the defense has been put together beautifully. I think the reason I feel a modicum of positivity for this weekend is that they didn't have to do anything outside of structure. They didn't have to throw any wrinkles. They didn't have to bring varied pressures. They didn't have to run these. And so the 49ers offense to start off on this side of the ball is just a different beast to anything else that they've faced in recent weeks.
It is, yeah, and the Giants have done a lot of creative stuff in how they used Daniel Jones and got Saquon Barkley back going again, but they never really had a chance to get to any of that. I was listening to the Bill Simmons kind of Monday NFL podcast. It's heavily based around gambling, but it obviously do some football discussion as well. And he made a point that I kind of agree with, and don't really think about, that the Giants deferred the coin toss, and which is obviously you don't get that second thought. You get the ball to start second half. But if it was a game where the Giants needed the ball first, it was this one. You get points on the board, even if it's just a field goal. If you get the chance to play with a bit of a lead against the Eagles, then you take it. I kind of agree with him on that front, because the Eagles got off to a fast start and the Giants were just never in the game after that. And they don't have the horses even on offense or on defense. That linebacker core isn't equipped to deal with that offense on a regular basis with how multiple the Eagles' run game can be. And it became a race to bedtime for me. It's like, can I go to bed yet? Because I've got a newborn child and I probably need to be awake at some point soon. And the answer quickly became yes. But the Niners, I think they're better equipped to cause them problems on both sides of the ball. Obviously, we spoke about the linebacker core at depth. The Eagles do attack where the Niners are weakest on defense, and kind of having that running quarterback. We've seen the Niners struggle with running quarterbacks in the past, so the Niners are going to have to be really, really disciplined and really be on their keys, which they were against the Cowboys, to be fair. And it's Benjamin Solak on the ringer. I highlight the key battle is what you've already pointed out there, the depth the Eagles have on the interior of that defensive line with Cox and Sue and Hargrave, and Jordan Davis is back for the Eagles. And the Niners O-line in the first half against the Cowboys kind of got bullied on the interior, was better in the second half, particularly when Spencer Burford came in, the rookie. I thought he played really well. So that's going to be the key battle. If the Niners can kind of at least hold serve on that interior and allow themselves to not have Purdy under duress every time he drops back, and to be able to win kind of those blocks in the run game. Where the Eagles have been vulnerable in the past, you saw the Commanders beat them on the road in the regular season with the run game, effectively, with Antonio Gibson. And the other Commanders running back name escaped me, but
Brian Robinson,
that's it. Yeah, they attacked them with the run game on the ground and ran the ball at them and were successful. And the Niners had the recipe to do that. We saw that in the second half against the Cowboys. So there's going to be a couple of really key battles that, particularly in the trenches, will end up deciding this game, I think.
Yeah, I think that run game side of it is huge. And look, as much as we thought that was the one way the Giants could beat the Eagles, was if they ran the ball well, and if they also kind of stopped it on the other side of the ball, and Dexter Lawrence and all those guys turned up and they didn't manage to do either. I fully expect the 49ers and how kind of varied their run often is, how they can do so much out of different formations, how, the Eagles, I get that they got those big guys up front, right? I get that they've improved the interior of their line with some experienced, talented guys. But this season, they have let up 5 yards of play to running backs, and they are kind of down in the lower reaches of, I think, 26th in DVOA against the run. And if you wait that to the second half of the season, it's not much better. It's not like it improved hugely with those guys in there, but it just improved enough to get by, which you've seen in previous years. I can think of the 49ers team that went to that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. You felt like the secondary had improved just enough, probably wasn't championship caliber, but had improved just enough to get by, and they had everything else they needed to get there. It ended up being a thing that torched them in the end. For me, with what they do with yards after the catch, with yards after contact as well, and Elijah Mitchell, when he came into that game, and I know we want to see what state Christian McCaffrey's calf is in as part of it, but when Elijah Mitchell came into that game, he looked brilliant. And I just think that 5 yards a carry on the ground against an okay running team could be 8 yards a carry on the ground against the 49ers. And they could methodically pick you apart and mean that Brock Purdy doesn't have to do what he did against Jalen Hurts when they had a 42-41 game when they faced off with each other in college and have 6 total touchdowns. Like that kind of game is just not going to happen. But I do believe that they can pick on an Eagles defense that, as much as it is absolutely brilliant and probably better top to bottom, I don't think the linebackers are as strong. And I do think that secondary is very turnover reliant. Maybe that ends up being the difference. We finally do see those plays picked, but I don't know. I'm justifying what I think it's probably a top 3 defense in the NFL and and the number 1 defense on the other side. But I do think that Kyle Shanahan and the brilliance that he's shown and the way that he's coached this team up. I think it's been his best coaching performance on the offensive side of the ball in his career this season, considering all the changes at quarterback as well. And so I just fancy the 49ers to be able to do enough on that side of the ball and rely on that their defense will be able to do enough. You're completely right about Hurts. And look, how terrifying is it to see that, he's coming into this game with an injured shoulder. So, we don't know if he'll be able to rip the ball downfield. Opening drive, 40-yard bomb down the side to Devonta Smith. And he spoke to Peter King afterwards, and he said, that's the first deep ball I've thrown in 3 weeks, not even in practice, which is fascinating. But it also showed that he threw a pretty bloody good deep ball, considering he's not practiced it for 3 weeks. And then he runs an RPO and almost invites contact with that shoulder and runs 2 guys over and picks up a first down 2-3 plays later. So, I do. The reason I'm still in my mind leaning Eagles is the quarterback, even as good as our defense is. But I just think with Warner, Alshire, and Greenlaw, as we've talked about, if they don't have any silly mistakes, I think they can handle facing a running quarterback. And then it's just, this is a much better set of weapons than we saw last week. Dallas Goedert, I thought, was brilliant for the Eagles this past Saturday and has been so important since he's come back from injury. And we know what A.J. Brown can do. We know what Devonta Smith can do. We know what Miles Sanders can do. So I think these are the 2 most complete teams in the NFL. I really like, and maybe let's pick the AFC Championship game as well shortly. I really like the Bengals top to bottom as well. And I think the Chiefs, what they have as their highs are so high that it can cover up everything else. But I think if you want to talk just if these 2 teams faced each other 10 times on a neutral field, I think it would end 5-5. Whereas if either of them faced either of the AFC teams in the same situation, I think they'd go 7-3, 8-2. I really do. I don't know. I'm talking myself in circles, Nicholas. Pull me out of the hole.
No, you've spelled it out perfectly with that 10 times, therefore. It's a coin flip game for me. And I understand why the Eagles are favoured. They're at home. But that line of 2.5, there's normally a 3-point swing for the home team. So if you put it that way, it suggests that if you put it on neutral field, they make the Niners half-point favourite. So it kind of says to you that Vegas doesn't know either. That's how even match. And you're right; these are the 2 deepest teams in the NFL, and you're also right in your reason for confidence in that they can move the ball. And we've seen this Eagles. The eye-opening one, more so than the Commanders, was when they beat the Packers quite soundly, but the Packers still scored quite a lot of points and had a lot of success moving the ball on the ground with a Shanahan-based offense with 2 running backs in Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, and the Niners have 2 better running backs in Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell. I think Elijah Mitchell is absolutely key. This weekend, I thought he was excellent down the stretch, particularly if it's close. He's really that guy who can run it between the tackles and get extra yards after contact. Not that obviously CMC can do that as well, but he does so many other different things. It's the complement of Mitchell is so important to this running game, I think.
And they'll run Debo as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. You've got 3 backs there, so it's a lot more. Like you say, it's a lot more varied than what the Giants are able to throw. But as good as Saquon Barkley is, but yeah, it's a game everybody wanted to see because it is so star-laden. You can just list off name after name after name on both sides of the ball, and maybe you give the Eagles the slight edge in the trenches just because of sheer depth. But the Niners and Kyle Shanahan have play calls that can neutralize that. If that's probably where I'll give the Niners the edge. I think they've got the better play callers on both sides, Kyle Shanahan and D'Amico Ryans, and they're going to have to cook up the best they've got to win this game.
Saw a very funny tweet earlier that was trending, by the way, where it had the Nick Sirianni giving it to the sideline, and somebody from a local Philly radio was like, "Is there a better sports town in the world than Philadelphia?" And somebody replied saying, "Well, London has 6 Premier League teams, 8 Football League teams, Twickenham, Wimbledon, Wembley, regular NFL games, regular MLB games, NBA." Just literally was like, no, actually, London absolutely poos on everything you've just said. But I like Philly sports fans are fun, and I'm sure that if we lose this weekend, I'm sure there'll be a party in Arizona, and it'll be great to see the Eagles fans out there. And I'm not going into this like I did with either Seattle or Dallas, where I'm fretting about losing to a team that I don't like and don't think are as good as us. Yeah. I'd hate to have lost with those teams, not only because I have beef with Seattle and Dallas as a 49ers fan, but because I legitimately think the 49ers are better than both those teams.
Yeah.
This game feels incredibly even. And okay, if we got blown out, I'd be annoyed. But if we see a classic on Sunday in the 8 o'clock window that comes down to a winning field goal, a single score, a moment of brilliance, a frustrating moment of not brilliance, a calamitous moment, whatever it might be, I can accept it because they're a brilliant team, and I'm sure that they will have brought it. That being said, I feel like because I'm on a Niners podcast, I should pick the Niners.
There's the phrase, it's kind of an enjoyable arrogance to the Sirianni Eagles and Philadelphia in general, but they've kind of backed it up. They have backed it up because they're the number one seed, and they backed it up in baseball this year by going to the World Series. So when they back it up, it's perfectly acceptable, and I kind of enjoy it. Like I say, they're a fun bunch. I have absolutely nothing against them, and I think it's like I say, repeat myself, it's a game we wanted to see for a reason because I think it has that potential to go right down to the wire and be an absolute classic.
And it's not like the basketball team didn't go and get one of the best players in all of basketball this year to back up what could be a championship level team in James Harden either. So screw you, Philly. Mate, yeah. I was just about to say maybe if the Giants had got Aaron Judge, we could be talking about San Francisco and the Bay Area in the same terms with the Warriors and everything as well. But yeah, I think it's got to be 3 sports minimum you're dominant at to take it to that sort of level to compete with Philly, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Look, I earlier this week, so pre-season, I picked a Niners Chiefs Super Bowl on a Talk Sport video that I dug out this week to look at other people's predictions. I'm not calling out Nat Coombs specifically, but it is like he did pick Brady to do something special again this year. And it just reminds you that you do tend to pick silly things at the beginning of the year sometimes that, wash out. Yeah, at the beginning of this week, I said I thought it was going to be a Bengals-Eagles Super Bowl when we did it in the immediate aftermath on the Monday. I'm kind of talking myself into the Niners. I think they're going to win like something ridiculous, like 23-21. It's going to be a classic. And then we go to Arizona, baby.
Yeah, I have this image of kind of a late defensive stop that's going to shred my nerves into oblivion, but I kind of have this image of them pulling it off. And this is the team. They're not going to be intimidated by what will be an exceptionally raucous Philadelphia crowd. If any team's going to stand up to that, any team's going to enjoy that, it's the Niners. And you've already heard kind of George Kittle and the like speaking about relishing the atmosphere, and they will. They'll play up to it, and they'll happily play the role of villains, and I think they'll stay in it right to the end. Because I'm a homer, and because I think they do have the horses to do it, I think they'll pull it off, and I think they'll be playing the Bengals in the Super Bowl. Because I'm not sure I can see the Chiefs overcoming Patrick Mahomes on one leg for the second straight week. The Bengals are not the Jaguars, as they proved so emphatically last week. Pick Bills Niners at the start of the season. I think it's just a different team beginning with a B. This on February the 12th.
Go make it Talk Sport coverage. Hosts is the Niners fan. The lead producer is a Bengals fan. That's going to end up being good fun if that's what ends up happening. I fancy the Bengals as well this weekend against the Chiefs, as much as the Chiefs at home. Again, very slight favourites. Again, they are a very talented team, and I thought their defense stood up in a really big way against Jacksonville as well and stopped the run excellently and probably put in one of their best classic kind of Steve Spagnuolo January performance. But I do think that Joe Burrow is a guy who will handle the pressures thrown at them in a spectacular way. They're going to hopefully have both Kappa and Jonah Williams back, but actually the scheming from Zach Taylor in the second half of the year, we did this on the Gridiron Show, so go and listen to the Gridiron Show, but both myself and Simon Clancy apologized to Zach Taylor for our previous disdain towards him, because not only has he proven himself to be a great leader with everything that happened with Damar Hamlin, but the play calling in the run game in this second half of the year has been absolutely unreal.
That was what stood out largely on Sunday, was just Joe Mixon just running it in the snow. The Bengals by far the team more prepared to run the ball down their throats in the snow, and I absolutely adore Joe Burrow. I'm still annoyed that they took away that touchdown pass to Chase for reasons I still don't fully understand. It was just too aesthetically pleasing. I think to shout out again, Mina Kimes tweeted at the time, rule of cool says you can't overturn that touchdown, but the refs don't subscribe to the rule of cool, unfortunately.
If that also means that Mina Kimes is a Dungeons and Dragons fan, I actually don't think I could meet her, because I'd be like, regardless of who you are, you're too cool for us to be friends. So sorry. only someone like me could think that being a Dungeons and Dragons fan makes you too cool. But that is very funny. Yeah, I just the way they schemed up, and you said that about the Joe Mixon thing. I remember a playoff game 12 months ago where they pounded the outside zone on every run play, getting 2.5 yards a run, and it clearly wasn't working. And Zach Taylor just had nothing else to go to. And I don't know what's happened in the last 12 months. I don't know what he studied during the offseason. I don't know what he spent his time doing, but that offense looks good now. And I fancy them to. I think I'd pick them even if Mahomes wasn't hobbled.
Yeah.
But high ankle strain is not something that you should be playing your quarterback on, particularly when he's so spectacular out of the pocket, out of structure, off platform, those jumping ridiculous throws, those little tosses, and it's not going to be able to do any of that. So Bengals 49ers Super Bowl for me as well.
Yeah.
God, that'll be a fun one. Guys, thank you so much for listening, watching, engaging. We release additional content around the games at the weekends. We actually don't have the 49ers game on radio this weekend. It's on the other station. But if you want to join us on TalkSport for reaction from like 11 p.m. onwards as we give you the AFC Championship game on radio, we will talk plenty of Niners then as well, either way. And then, we're going to be out at the Super Bowl in 2 weeks' time. So less than that, 10 days or something like that, we fly out. So we'll have loads of content for you from there as well. At UK Gridiron, at Gridiron. Check out the good stuff that the 49ers Faithful UK guys are doing as well. I've heard that there's a party in Leeds this weekend, but haven't had final confirmation yet. So I didn't want to talk about it until we knew all the details for certain. So sorry it's not made it onto the podcast, guys.
I don't think the venue's been confirmed yet. I've been told on the download, to use that terrible phrase, where it's supposed to be, but I don't think we can reveal that yet. I don't think I'll be there because I think I'll have to do what I did last Sunday and watch the fourth quarter with a newborn baby on my shoulder. So I don't think I'll be in attendance for that one, but I'm sure it'll be very well attended by the 49ers Faithful UK guys who always show up in great numbers.
I'm terrified that if I had a baby on my shoulder when Al-Shaair trucked Zeke Elliott like he was a newborn child himself, that that baby would have ended up clinging to the ceiling.
I can't stop laughing about that play. It's so fun.
I mean, we haven't broken it down, but if you want a fun breakdown of it, we did that on the Gridiron Show as well, because it is farcical. Thank you guys for listening, for watching, all that good stuff. We really appreciate you. This has been Tales from the Bay.